I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting of the City of Davenport's Plan and Zone Commission on October 5th. Anybody in the audience that has a cell phone, I'd appreciate it if you have it turned off, as it could affect our audio. We will start with roll call, please. Laura?
Schneider.
Present.
Lammers is excused. Johnson.
Here.
Tallman is excused. Ingram.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Bransgard.
Here.
Reinhardt is excused. Manis is excused. Garrington. Here. Stelk.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Laura. I also wish to say we have no activity on the public hearing tonight, so we will move directly into our regular meeting. Report of city council activity, Laura?
We actually don't really have any new activity at this point.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you. Secretary's report?
Move the report.
All in favor of the secretary's report as printed, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it will stay as printed. Anything with comp plan, Laura?
Nothing new to report.
Thank you. Zoning activity. We have two items tonight of new business. Commissioner Hepner, could you please read those?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, case number ORD 21-02 is request of the City of Davenport to amend various sections of Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code of Davenport, Iowa, entitled Zoning. Staff recommends case ORD 21-02 be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval of the proposed amendments, and I so move.
Case number ORD 21-02 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Laura?
Okay, thank you. For context, these changes were part of a city council set of goals for the city of Davenport, in particular for the Mid-Brady corridor and focusing on revitalization. One of the tools for that revitalization is through the zoning code and the associated pieces within that code. So, and then we, as always, take the opportunity when we find things that could be tweaked. We will continue to update the rest of the code text changes as an effort to fine tune the zoning code. So the first section where we have text change is in chapter 17.05.010, which is the purpose statements for the commercial districts. So here you can see that the purpose statement for the proposed city center zoning district is the city center zoning district is intended to position the central part of the city for revitalization oriented toward a regional mix of commercial, high-density residential, and entertainment that encourages compatible development and redevelopment while promoting local reinvestment. Also within chapter 17.05, but in the dimensional standards section 0.03, we are proposing an alteration of the C1 front setback. Currently it is a 0 to 15 foot build to zone, which means you need to build within 0 to 15 feet of the property line, on the front property line. Our proposal is to put it so that it can be in line with adjacent buildings. So the code section impacted by that is C in this section. In the C1 district, where 70% of a block face has been redeveloped, new construction may exceed the build to zone limits by no more than the average setback of structures on said block face. Within the table 17.05-1, which are the commercial dimensional standards, this is to incorporate new dimensional standards for the city center zoning district, as well as make that amendment to the C1 minimum front setback. So for the city center, under this slide, we do not propose a minimum lot area or a minimum lot width or a gross floor area for non-residential maximum. We have for maximum building height, none unless within 75 feet of a residential district, then 35. And then we do not have a minimum front setback. And as you can see, there is reference to the change in the minimum front setback in C1. We added the language, unless meeting the standards of section 17.05.030C. The next piece of the table for city center, we do not propose a front setback build 2 percentage, none for a minimum interior side setback unless abutting a residential district, then 20. Minimum corner side setback, none. Corner side setback build 2 percentage is none. And then minimum rear setback, none unless abutting a residential district, then 25. And then we added the same language for minimum corner side setback as the front setback, because it's basically having 2 front yards for a corner in C1. So again, the language is unless meeting the standard of section 17.050.030C. In table 17.05-2, commercial design standards, these remain unchanged from the presentation of the public hearing. The city center design standards would mirror the C3 design standards that are already in place in that zoning district. The only change you will see is when you get to the multi-tenant commercial center and office park site design, where the following standard has been added. In multi-building complexes, a distinct visual link must be established between various buildings through the use of architectural features or site design elements such as courtyards, plazas, landscape, and walkways to unify the project. Currently, that is in our commercial office park standard, so it'll match that one. In chapter 17.08.020, table 17.08-01, which is the use matrix, it sets the uses for the city center zoning district. Those remain unchanged from our public hearing. In addition, the following changes have been made and were also highlighted in our public hearing. For bed and breakfast in R1 and R2, changing from permitted to special use. Daycare center as a special use in I1. Adding food bank as permitted in I2. Adding a parking lot as a principal use in I2. For residential care facility in C1, changing from special use to permitted. And then self-storage facility enclosed, changing from permitted to special use in C3 and removing from the commercial office park district. And then self-storage facility outdoor, removing from C3. So I wanted to highlight those ones, and then I'll go back and we can talk a little bit more about the city center. Okay, so for changes from the differences between what currently is zoned C3 to the city center zoning district on this slide would be not allowing billboards and not allowing broadcast facility TV radio, and removing car washes and children's home. For this one, it would be removing the drug alcohol treatment facility, residential, drug treatment clinic, domestic violence shelter, and then changing drive-throughs from special use from permitted to special use. On this slide, the changes between C3 and city center are changing dwelling multifamily and dwelling townhouse to special use, adding dwelling single-family semi-detached and dwelling two-family new construction as special uses within the district. And then it would be removing financial institution alternative as a special use, removing food pantry, removing funeral home, changing gas station from permitted to a special use. On this slide, it would be removing greenhouse nursery retail, halfway house, heavy retail, homeless shelter, and industrial design. And this one, it has no proposed changes between the C3 and City Center. For this slide, it would be removing self-storage for both enclosed and outdoor, changing retail alcohol sales to a special use, and removing social service center. And on this slide, would be removing vehicle dealership enclosed, vehicle dealership with outdoor storage display, vehicle rental enclosed, vehicle rental outdoor storage / display, vehicle repair service, major and minor, and I think that's all of them. Oh, I missed the vehicle rental as well. So those would all be removed. And then the temporary uses remain unchanged. In Chapter 17.080.030, which are principal uses under animal care facilities, small animal and animal breeder, changing the maximum height from 7 to 8 feet for a fence. For car wash, we are proposing to add the 2 following standards. Vacuum stations shall not be located between the car wash structure and a lot line of an abutting residential district, and car washes must be located and designed to ensure that they do not adversely affect traffic circulation on adjoining streets. Car washes must not route existing traffic into adjacent residential neighborhoods. For dwelling multifamily, we propose adding 2 additional principal use standards. Ancillary buildings and accessory structures to multiple family dwellings shall meet the following design standards. Structures shall maintain the character of the multifamily development. Structures are encouraged to match the pitch of the roof of the principal dwelling, and structures utilizing metal siding and or roofing shall have a matte finish or similar non-glare finish. And then setbacks for accessory structures like garages, carports, and sheds shall meet the required accessory structure setback. Ancillary buildings such as offices or community rooms shall meet the principal use setbacks. In Chapter 17.08.040, temporary use, the following language is stricken. So I'll read what it will. So we're taking out of this ordinance and any. So it will read, temporary uses are required to comply with the standards of this section in addition to all other regulations and licensing requirements of the municipal code. That's how it will read as proposed. In Chapter 17.050 use definitions, the following language would be added. Display fireworks per the American Pyrotechnic Association only, and that's to clarify between a residential firework, a couple neighborhood people utilizing some fireworks versus full-fledged displays. In Chapter 17.09.020 exterior lighting, Section C for luminaire with cutoff standards, the following is proposed. 25 feet in all residential districts, CT, C1, CV, SAG, and SOS. 35 feet in height for C2, C3, CC, COP, CD, CE, SIC, and IMU. And 40 feet in height for I1 and I2. And then finally, Chapter 17.15.050, non-conforming parking lot landscaping. We would propose striking the word resurfacing from Section A. So it would be resealing or restriping of an existing parking lot which does not entail paving or replacement of the asphalt, concrete, or other paving materials is not considered reconstruction. Public input. The notice was published in the Quad City Times informing the community of the September 14th Plan and Zone Commission public hearing. And the staff received 1 email asking the following questions. Why is hotel permitted instead of a special use? And are other entertainment uses allowed to be outdoors? The noise carries, but the indoor events would be okay. Recommendation, staff recommends case ORD 21-02 be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody on the commission have any questions at this time? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against? Seeing none. Laura, I'm sure you've been in conversation with the owner, Macerich. I assume they're not in attendance tonight. Where are they on this? Are they?
We've given them all the information to review, and we have not heard one way or the other. I think that they understand the concept and support that concept. They were just reviewing to make sure it wouldn't have any major impacts on them.
Okay. I briefly had conversation with you regarding the height requirement and the neighbors and the setbacks. And are we okay with a 100-foot building? I understand why you're having a limit of 100 feet for the Northwest Bank Tower to be in compliance, but are we okay with a 100-foot? I'm not saying that a hotel or office building is going to spring up north of where Sears is, but are we okay with that next to a residential district?
So just to clarify, I'm proposing no height maximum at this point. We did review it. There is substantial buffer already in place for the majority of the single-family home. The majority of the buffer is at least 180 feet. There is a narrower spot, and that's why we added the language for 75 feet. That area where it is narrower, it is lower topography from the single-family home to the commercial. And so that's what internally we discussed and being okay with. Within the 75-foot boundary, the 35 feet's actually lower than what's allowed right now. And so, yes. I guess
Well, the only reason, well, one of the reasons I bring this up is I remember a couple neighbors before those two commercial buildings were constructed or allowed east of the residential on 46. I mean, one of them was maybe 3 stories, and the couple neighbors are pretty concerned that that dental office or whatever could look right through their windows basically, or into their fenced-in yard. And I realized we went ahead and did it, but at the same time, if we're talking a no height limit in the parking lot just south of there, that concerns me. Just my opinion. Commissioner Garrington.
Yes, the 15-foot setback and the average, as compared to the average. What if the average was 30 feet back? Would they still be able to do the 15, or would they, okay?
Yes.
Should it be, wouldn't that interrupt the thing we're trying to allow, if they're all at 10 feet, he can weigh as close as 10 feet. He could also be back 15, I assume. But shouldn't it be along with the neighboring buildings instead of one or the other, or whichever one is best for the area?
That's why we have the language may exceed. So if they choose to want to build closer to the lot line than their neighboring properties, maybe they want to build something up front and then have parking lot and then another building, that would still be within the code. So they could still build right up to the property line as long as there's not a utility easement, but this also gives them the ability to be in line with their neighboring properties. So it allows them to go further back than they would normally be allowed.
Well, I have no problem with them being in line with neighboring property. I think that's a great thing. Mm-hmm. But if the neighboring property is 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, they should probably be in line no matter where it is, not within our 15-foot level, is what I'm trying to say. So instead of saying one or the other, whichever one is that, or probably should just say just with neighboring in mind. Why the 15 feet? Unless there is nothing else, if there is neighboring, it should fit in with the neighboring. Does that make any, I'm sorry, am I being clear here? I want it to look the same, so it should be in line with neighboring, no matter where the neighboring is. If there is no neighboring, then 15 feet.
That's pretty much what it says.
Oh,
Yeah, it says it says it in a kind of a reverse way, but it achieves the same thing.
all right, so if everybody was back 20, you don't want them sticking out an extra 5, or back 30, you don't want them sticking out an extra 15 feet.
Yeah, if they want to stick out further, they can, but
Yeah.
they're not going to. So, and the majority of new construction would have a 15-foot utility easement in there.
Yeah,
And that's one of the reasons why the 0 to 15 doesn't work in certain areas of the city. It does in the hilltop. It does along some other stretches, but like a newer build, especially if they subdivided, we would require them to put on that 15-foot utility easement off of the street facing side. So it's, yeah, I understand what you're saying for consistency's sake. But in some of these other districts that have a minimum setback, they don't build necessarily right up to that setback. They could go 120 feet back. They don't have consistency in that respect either.
no, I don't want to force them
Right.
that. I just want them to be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. Should there be 2 or 3 other buildings in the block, I would think they should be consistent with that. You set the minimum, but if the rest of the neighborhood is back farther than the minimum, that should become the minimum.
That's what the language says.
Is it, okay,
Yeah. It says 0 to 15 unless the rest of the block that's developed is further back, and then they would be in line with that. They couldn't go further back than what's in line, but
Okay.
yeah.
I thought, okay, I didn't read it quite that way,
Okay.
but that's all right. Good.
Thank you, Commissioner Garrington. Commissioner Johnson.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess I'd say I respectfully disagree. I think that the 15-foot, I guess differential is probably good variation for design, in some kinds, in some situations may help, and really 15 feet isn't much, consideration when you're talking about a rather large building. So I think for design purposes, it's not, a huge issue on that matter. As far as the height issue, I also kind of, I feel like the first time you presented this, you said something along the lines of, of course it comes up to the design, I guess the layout of the development for the higher height buildings. I agree with what you're saying is I wouldn't love to see them right, on the northwest edge of this property, but, I could definitely see, and I've imagined, higher buildings that would match the Northwest Bank building or better, that I think would be great in that area, either in the southeast section or, definitely allowable within, on the east side between Brady and Welcome Way. So, if anything, maybe a consideration to allow them in a certain section of the area if possible, as just a consideration. I don't know if that's, because really there is no resident, 75 feet, is I feel like rather close when you're talking about that height. But when you get to the location, it's so, I guess I'd be kind of curious to see the layout of how far that 75 feet is, what the possibilities would be, and if that needs to be, maybe considered to be a little bit further. But I do love the idea of high-rise building in that area, so additional high-rise building. Just a thought.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Are we looking at a display or?
I was going to take you on our internet map to show you kind of conceptually to Commissioner Johnson's question,
Reagan, are you done though?
Yeah, but I would appreciate that very much.
yeah. So, so this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, and don't want to steal Matt's thunder, but are planning on preserving the green space buffer along that and have that as a condition on the rezoning. And so really the biggest area where there isn't a lot of green space buffer is on this north side here. And so the existing buffer is about 20 feet. And so now this is not 100% accurate tool, but you'd be looking about there. If that helps you visualize. Now, also keep in mind right now, and this is part of one of the reasons why the Candlelight Creek, as you can see from this map, is piped underground here. It's about a 45-inch diameter pipe through this area. So that does kind of dictate to a certain extent what will happen in this area as well. So just kind of a general FYI.
Are you good or?
No, I do have.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So on that, I guess then my question is there a way to make a proposal that has maybe a sort of a gradual height
Yep.
restriction?
So let's see, go to the right spot. So what I would state, and this is, well, let me go onto the city code for you. I can pull it up.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, is this addressing your concern as well?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
it's okay if I speak.
Let Laura do her thing first, and I'm not going to leave you out there.
So we could do something similar to what is in the residential dimensional standards where they do have, so for the residential multifamily for building height, you could say for dwelling uses, you could have those at a lower level, and then you could do higher. You could do, so for I think it's, yes, the interior side setback, that's your phased one. So right here, it says 2-family, single-family, semi-detached. The interior side setback is 5 feet. For townhomes and multifamily, it's 10 feet. And then when abutting residential districts, structures over 45 feet in height require 1 foot additional setback for each 3 in height. So you could do something similar in terms of a phasing.
Currently, Laura, the height restriction on that property is what, 45 feet?
Correct, yes.
So they could go 45 feet right up to
Correct,
the parking lot, basically.
yeah.
Commissioner Hepner, you were looking to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about Northwest Bank Building being non-conforming, but this is an attempt to bring it back into a conforming state. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that your concern, Mr. Chairman, was being addressed, and I don't know that it has been.
Well, my concern was basically, I would like to leave the restriction fairly tight to what it is on the northernmost part of this property and some way incrementally allow it to go taller as it moves south towards the Kimberley Road, and I don't know what the ultimate goal of Macerich is. I mean, they tore down the Sears over in Moline, they tore down the Sears in Coral Ridge, and built additional buildings there. If Sears goes away, that opens up a lot of square footage of property too. I don't mind a higher building there. I would encourage it. I realize it's expensive, but at the same time, I really wish that we could come up with an incremental plan to leave the 45-foot on the northern whatever percentage of the property and incrementally let it grow as it heads south. That's what my ultimate goal is.
Do you think we could do that or achieve that with a setback?
I don't know that that would work. I don't know. I mean, you're getting pretty deep into the lot. I don't know that that formula would necessarily create the end result of a 100-foot building, is what I'm saying, based on the setback calculation. I mean, I could whip out my calculator, or Matt's got an answer maybe.
So I think the concern for the setback from the residential portion is actually more of a condition that you could place on our next item on the agenda.
Okay?
That's true.
Because when you change the height restrictions on the zoning text, that will apply to every property
I
regardless
understand.
of where it is.
And
So
I'll
it
be
would
honest with you, I
apply.
think I was jumping the gun a little bit. I admit that. So maybe we'll just let this ride for now and move on to
Yeah.
the second ORD.
Okay.
Any additional thoughts, questions, concerns? Does that help you out, Commissioner Hepner and Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any additional questions, any observations from the crowd like to step forward? No, you gotta come up to the microphone. And please identify yourself and your address.
William Pamperin, 37th Street in Davenport. As Mr. Ingram said, height-wise, I can't see a 100-foot building right next to 46th Street and around there. You have a lot of light pollution. When the taller the building, the more light pollution you're gonna have. It's gonna go right into the backyards of these houses. You're gonna get complaints from the residents eventually. Any other noise coming from that building goes to the residents in the surrounding area there. So like Mr. Ingram said, more of a progressional type height as you come towards Kimberley Road would be really an excellent idea, because you would save a lot of problems later on from people complaining about the light and noise. Thank you.
Appreciate your thoughts. Any additional thoughts or concerns at this time? We'll bring that up again under the next ordinance. Commissioners, final call? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Schneider,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hepner,
Yes.
Bransgard,
Yes.
Garrington,
Yes.
Stoke.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next case, Mr. Chairman, is case REZ 21-04, request of the city of Davenport to rezone 143 acres, more or less, of property located near 320 West Kimberley Road, generally being bounded by Northwest Boulevard, Kimberley Road, Brady Street, East 42nd Street, Welcome Way, and by the north lot line of North Park Mall, changing the zoning from C3 General Commercial to CC City Center District. Staff recommends case REZ 21-04 be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the 3 listed findings and 2 conditions, and I so move.
Case number REZ 21-04 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Laura?
Matt's going to
Oh,
actually
I'm
take
sorry,
this one.
Matt.
Okay, so this rezoning is to apply the city center district to property within the city. So this is namely the North Park Mall and the commercial properties between Welcome Way and Brady Street, south of 42nd Street and north of Kimberley Road, as identified in yellow on the map. So this is approximately 143 acres of land. all used for commercial purposes. So businesses that will be impacted by the city center district is North Park Mall, all the mall outlots, so the Northwest Bank building as we discussed. And then 4 through 7 are the properties between Welcome Way and Brady, which is Green State Credit Union, A to Z Towing and Transport, Pleasure Pools and Spas, and then Tommy's Car Wash. So on the map we have, on the left we have our zoning map. So this area is currently zoned C3, which is a general commercial district. The surrounding land uses are compatible with that. So we have corridor commercial along Welcome Way, and then additional C3 to the west of the mall property, and then south of Kimberley Road. And then the neighborhood directly north of the mall is zoned R3, which is a predominantly single-family zoning district. So the area outlined in black is petitioned under this item to be rezoned from general commercial to city center. Our land use map is on the right side of the page. Staff is not proposing a change to the land use plan. So the mall portion, so the land located west of Welcome Way is regional commercial. And then those commercial properties between Welcome Way and Brady are commercial corridor. So staff are proposing no change at this time. So the C3 General Commercial District, it's intended to accommodate higher intensity commercial development within the city that serves both local and regional markets. It's typically medium and large scale development that generates higher traffic volumes. And then our city center district, which is proposed through our zoning text, would be applied to this subject area. So the reason for this is that the city center district is intended to position the central part of the city for revitalization, oriented towards a regional mix of commercial, high-density residential, and entertainment that encourages compatible development and redevelopment while promoting local reinvestment in this part of the city. So the purpose of this item is to assign the city center district to these targeted properties. And really this is being spurred by the need to revitalize the North Park Mall and the surrounding commercial corridor areas. So in terms of public input, staff has been in contact with the owners of the mall as well as other impacted businesses in this region. Staff has placed multiple signs at high traffic areas along the Welcome Way, Brady, Kimberley, and Northwest Boulevard corridors. Notices were also sent to abutting property owners within 200 feet to notify them of the public hearing in September. So staff have received a few written comments through email. General concerns have come from neighboring properties from that residential area to the north. So just to highlight some of the items that have been brought forth, one has been the potential roadway connections into the abutting residential neighborhood. So there's, I believe, 5 streets that stub into the mall property along that north lot line. The neighborhood, or that particular person would like those streets to not continue through to the mall. There's been comments to preserve the existing green space that buffers the mall from that residential neighborhood. And then we've had questions on the impact of property values and taxes. So if this property were rezoned, how would that impact the neighborhood to the north? There's been no formal written protest petitions that have been received. And then staff has also published a public hearing in the Quad City Times. So to address some of these concerns, this goes along with one of the conditions that's proposed, and that is to preserve the existing buffer yard. So that's outlined in yellow. This area currently exists today. There's a variety of different trees planted in this area that serves as a natural buffer between the parking lot and backside of the mall to the homes. And then to address the other item regarding the street connections, another condition, so we have looks like 6 different potential street connections that could be made. So that would be Fairway Drive stubs out, Westerfield Road, Harrison Street, Main Street, and Sheridan Street all have a stub that dead ends into that green space buffer. And then we also added West 44th Street in the event that that might one day be carried through to the mall. So just kind of outlining our approval standards for map amendments in our zoning ordinance. So we want to make sure that rezoning property is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, that's compatible with the zoning of nearby property, that it is keeping with the neighborhood character, the extent to which the proposed amendment promotes the public health, safety, and welfare of the city, the suitability of the property for the purposes which it is presently zoned, and then the extent to which the proposed amendment creates nonconformities. So staff's finding is that the zoning map amendment at these targeted properties is consistent with the land use plan, which identifies the area as regional commercial and then commercial corridor. The proposed district is keeping with the city council goals of fiscal vitality, sustainable infrastructure, and generating a vibrant region. And then finally, the proposed map change furthers the purpose of the city center zoning district and meets the approval standards for map amendments. So staff is recommending approval with two conditions. So the first is that that buffer area identified in Exhibit 1 in the staff report be preserved. And then the second is that the street connections along the north, so that'd be West 44th, Fairway Drive, Harrison Street, Main Street, Sheridan Street, and Westerfield Road be prohibited.
Would commissioners have any questions of Matt's presentation at this time? Would anybody in the audience like to speak either in favor or opposition of this petition? Seeing none. Commissioners, any further discussion? Commissioner Hefner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Somehow I'd like to make a motion that we study or look at height restrictions from the north coming down, whether it be an extension of this buffer yard being extended from the west around to the north, or actual height restrictions in place. And I'm not really sure how, maybe the commission can help me word this properly, but somehow.
So I would suggest maybe a motion directing staff to address, what would be the best way to?
The maximum height of different areas.
Right, because what Matt had mentioned before is that there is potential in theory to rezone other properties this in the future. So this rezoning is a good opportunity to add a condition in. And so if you don't have a necessary suggestion at this time, I would say with a recommendation that city council address height restrictions on the, is it specifically in this area or is it where adjacent
From
to
the
residential?
conversations today, I think it's from the north down, primarily with the neighborhood. Jane?
Guidance or restrictions from north to south?
I think so.
Is that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
what you're thinking.
I'm hearing from.
I would agree. I think in my discussions with some of the neighbors and in the commission tonight on the earlier ordinance, I would like to see some type of progressive height allowance. I don't have a problem with duplicating the Northwest Bank Tower. I just don't like it on the north end. So if we're starting at 45 feet on the north end, some type of stair step, and it doesn't have to be every 10 feet. I'm talking, maybe we go from 45 foot on the top third of the property, and then you could go 85 to 100 feet on, you know, once you get down around equal with Sears or something. I don't want this to be difficult. I'm just looking for a pretty simple solution to the problem with the neighbors to the north. And I think the commission, from what I'm sensing tonight, is pretty much in agreement with that, if not unanimously.
Okay. How about, would something along this for a condition to amend the rezoning? So plan and zone commission would recommend approval with 3 conditions instead of 2, one being a phased height restriction, reducing height towards the, as it abuts residential, something. And that way, it's still a condition, and we can work it out. And maybe I can discuss with administration on possibilities there.
I would like, since Commissioner Hefner brought it up, could you craft a quick third condition along the lines of what Laura just said, and we can put that up for a motion?
Sure. So make a motion to study or address progressive height from north to south.
Starting with 45 feet as currently
So you're asking for it to be added as a condition?
correct.
A condition, so with an additional third condition for a phased, let me write it down, phased height.
Progressive height. Or phased height, however you want to say that. I think some others here want to chime in, Mr. Chairman.
Right, before we,
Does-
hold on just a second. Do I need a motion to discuss this, or can we discuss it prior to a motion?
You can
I'd ask
discuss-
our attorney, but unfortunately he's not here.
You can discuss prior to a motion.
Seconding a
Yeah,
motion?
before seconding a motion.
Okay. I thought we had to have a second too. Yes, you may.
I would like to second the motion of
Okay.
asking the staff to add a third condition of a phased height restriction from the north residential area leading to the south.
You're seconding the motion of Commissioner Heffernan.
Yes, that
Thank
was
you.
a second.
Commissioner Bransgard.
I know we're talking about this zoning classification being new and specific to this parcel, but do you anticipate this classification being used in other parcels in Davenport too?
It could be expanded, yep.
Would this complicate that?
Not this part, because the rezoning's specific to this area now.
Okay,
That's, I think, why we moved on from the text change as addressing it.
To a
and
condition?
to a condition on the
Okay.
actual rezoning.
perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bransgard. Any additional questions, or would the audience like to make any comment at this point? In that we have a third condition that's been moved and seconded, we've had our discussion. I would like to take a roll call vote on that third.
On the amendment.
On that amendment,
Okay.
On the condition?
on the condition.
May I hear the condition read in its entirety, please?
Okay. And please correct me if you're not happy with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner.
A third condition, adding a phased height restriction from the north residential area, increasing in height to the south.
I like that, thank you.
Any additional comments before we take roll call vote? Just on the condition. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Stelk,
Yes, in favor.
Garrington,
Yes.
Bransgard,
Yes,
Hepner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. that passes for the amendment to the original motion.
Thank you. We will get back to case REZ 21-04. Is there any additional discussion at this time? Audience, any questions, thoughts? Seeing none, final call for commissioners. Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Hefner,
Yes.
Bransgard,
Yes.
Garrington,
Yes,
Stelk,
Yes,
Schneider.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura.
That's all I have this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. We'll move on to any additional activity.
We have no additional activity. We do have some future business. There is a preliminary plat that will be coming at the October 9th meeting, and then a final plat as well at the October 9th meeting, 19th meeting.
I meant to say also that we had no subdivision activity. And we look forward to that next meeting. Are there any communications from commission or staff?
I have nothing further.
Any additional business? Seeing none?
Staff, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Do I understand that the Centennial Park, the building there, is going to be torn down? The restrooms and concession building?
I would have to look into it. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. That'd be sad. I was part of the design team on that. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hefner. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance. I appreciate your comments and thoughts and look forward to our next meeting.